We're partnering with NoCD to raise awareness about OCD. OCD is more than what you see on TV and in the movies. Imagine having unwanted thoughts about your relationship stuck in your head all day, no matter how hard you try to make them go away. That's Relationship OCD. It comes with unrelenting, intrusive images, thoughts, and urges about your partner or loved one. Breaking the OCD cycle takes effective treatment. Go to nocd.com to get evidence-based treatment. You're overly prepared. In fact, you've already got that stuff in your basement or in your storm shelter, or you've got it in your bag. You've got it in your living room. Like you are Johnny on the spot, ready for this emergency should it happen. And like that's challenging because yes, it's great to be prepared and we love it when we're proactive, but when is it harmful? Hi, I'm Erin, licensed clinical mental health counselor and OCD specialist. I'm also a wife, mom to 3, and small business owner, helping those who are spiraling from intrusive thoughts to come out of that valley with long-term recovery and self-awareness. Reheat your coffee and pop in your AirPods to learn how to boss up to OCD. Hey y'all! Here we are again for another Friday episode of Bossing Up Overcoming OCD. Have you ever had an intense fear about tornadoes or hurricanes and you are just fraught with fear whenever you see any wind in the forecast or dark clouds coming? Like it just feels like literal impending doom. This episode is for you. Today we're going to be talking about the phobia of hurricanes and tornadoes. All right, so do you remember a few weeks ago when I had the episode about emetophobia, which is that fear of puking? This episode is very similar. So let me give you a rundown of what a phobia is. A phobia is an intense or irrational fear about something, and that something is an object, situation, activity, or thing. All right. And it doesn't really impact your day-to-day life. Like there's no impairment. Yet someone with OCD, there is impairment and there's a lot of time being eaten up. There is an immense amount of fear happening. Of course, with the phobia, you can have a lot of fear. But for the OCD person, their fear is going to be very much exacerbated. And so it's going to be like to the level of being irrational, where it doesn't even make sense. But in thinking about the fear of tornadoes, and I've worked with plenty of people who have this fear of tornadoes, what they tell me is that they know that a tornado is not actually happening, but they very much fear that it is going to happen. And so they will do things that really don't even match up with tornadoes. For example, they feel like they have to turn the house keys a certain number of times in order to avoid a tornado. Or they have to play a game on their phone to keep a tornado from happening. Like it's just some random stuff. But there are some more logical compulsions that can go along with the fear of a tornado. And by the way, the tornado fear, and I may not even be pronouncing this right, and that's okay, is called Lilapsophobia. Yeah, like I've said before, there are so many phobias out there. It's a lot. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Now, is it reasonable to check the weather app for a tornado? Sure. Is it reasonable to follow protocol whenever there is a tornado watch or a tornado warning? Sure. More often than not, when working with someone who has OCD and this fear of tornadoes, they have so much knowledge about tornadoes and hurricanes that they may even know more than a meteorologist. It seems like these meteorologists, man, they get their job wrong like more than 50% of the time. They say it's going to rain, it doesn't rain. They say it's going to be sunny, and it's sunny. So, of course, that would create some unpredictability for the OCD sufferer because OCD wants a plan. It wants to know everything and it wants to control everything. And yeah, the weather, my goodness, we can see is very much out of control. Kind of like those storms that are happening in Texas. I was reading about all the hailstorms that are happening and how so many millions of people in Texas are without power. And, no lie. I mean, a lot of people have fears of storms. And so staying home, staying in a safe shelter. And oh my gosh, as I'm recording this episode, I hear a fire alarm going off, like from the fire department or something. So how ironic. So with inclement weather, someone with the phobia, they may be like beside themselves with fear whenever there is a storm. Maybe they're putting themselves already in the bathtub, like they are ready and prepared for this weather conundrum that's potentially happening. And they could be doing this with or without any real danger. Like, again, like with OCD, there is a level where it makes sense. And my apologies if I'm interchanging phobia and OCD because there is some overlap, yet some distinction. The distinction here is that with OCD, you have those intrusive thoughts and obsessions and or compulsions, which are those behaviors that you do to try to eliminate that terrible outcome from happening. Or in this case, you're trying to prevent a tornado from happening. So, is it reasonable to check the weather app? Yes. But is it reasonable to check your weather app 20 to 30 times? No, not really. Do you need 4 or 5 weather apps on your phone? No, you don't. All right, so here are some symptoms of Lilapsophobia, if I'm even saying that right. It's anxiety, constantly monitoring the weather. Maybe you have a lack of appetite, feeling helpless, dizzy, nauseous, panicky. You can't sleep. You're sweating. Maybe your heart rate is starting to get a little pitter-patter going on. More often than not, phobias are traced back to a negative experience that you've had in the past. Maybe you have been a part of a tornado before, or someone you loved was impacted by a tornado. The other thing that can happen for any of you who were Hurricane Katrina survivors, for example, it's important to seek out help from a professional that knows how to deal with trauma, because potentially, in addition to this phobia of tornadoes and hurricanes, you could be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. Another cause for this phobia is that potentially it's learned. Maybe you have a grandmother who is very fragile with her stress, and anytime a storm is coming, she's got to close the blinds, make sure she's away from the windows. Maybe she's sitting in an interior room, or she's already in that basement, y'all. Like, she's like, I ain't playing any games. I'm heading to the basement. If there's any threat of storm, I'm gone. It could be environmental or genetic in that case. And what we want to take note of is how excessive and persistent are these fears? Are your reactions out of proportion to the actual danger? Okay, so in prepping for this episode, I'm going to be real and tell you guys that I don't know the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning. And some of you out there are probably thinking like, Erin, how do you not know the difference? Or you're probably just like me and you're like, yeah, I don't know either. So in looking it up, all right, y'all, I had to go to Google to figure this out, because to me, just tell me when to seek shelter. That's all I need to know, really. And being in North Carolina, there's not many tornadoes, even though we did have a tornado like the other week. But just tell me when I need to seek shelter, or if I'm seeing some swirling debris and strong winds and thunderstorms, like, I'm getting out of Dodge. Like, I'm going to the basement. And going out to Google and looking at the differences and the terminology with these tornadoes A tornado watch means that there are conditions that are right for a tornado to take place, and just be ready to act quickly if it changes to then a tornado warning. So that makes sense. It's watch out just in case. And then the warning is it has been spotted or it has been indicated on their weather radar. So take shelter, do your emergency thing. And thinking about the weather, like how often is the weather person correct anyway? Oh my gosh, what other job out there can you be wrong 98% of the time and keep your job? I don't know of very many that are like that. All right, and then this other tornado terminology that they have on the weather.gov website is a tornado emergency. So that's when you seek shelter immediately, obviously. And yes, I think we've all been there where we have experienced some form of a tornado watch or warning, or maybe you have been in one of those emergencies. And so it can be scary and traumatic. And with someone who has a phobia or OCD, it's like if there's a possibility of a tornado occurring, let's say it's 0.00001% chance of happening, your OCD is going to grab onto that possibility and be like, oh, no, you guys, like it is 99.9% certain it's going to happen. Or maybe it's already at that 100% feeling of certainty. And so it can be very challenging if you or your loved one are suffering from this fear of tornadoes because, like, what is it? April through June is like the peak time of year for tornadoes and hurricanes. It's challenging because it's completely out of our control. We can't control the weather. In fact, it's, it's even hard to predict the weather. So on top of the unpredictability and lack of control, we've got the anxiety. And wouldn't you agree that 100 other people would feel like it's reasonable to be concerned about a tornado warning? Yet, what happens when we ask those 100 other people, how do they feel about a tornado watch? That's where we might start to see some difference. Or, you see all those storm chasers or those ridiculous videos of people filming a tornado from their front porch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what are we doing? So I guess it really depends on which 100 people you're asking and their fears and whatnot surrounding a tornado. So when it comes to these different types of alerts with tornadoes, some people take them very seriously, some people don't, some people think it's fun and interesting. It's like all sorts of perspectives. And then what we are focusing on are those of you that have the phobia and the fear. And it has me thinking about how these different types of alerts are not just always about weather. Like it comes down to our decision-making processes, because it feels like when we're treating doubt or we're concerned about an emergency happening, we're taking in all of the information and acting accordingly as if there is some immediate danger or drastic action. With tornado alerts, like not all threats and dangers are created equal, and sometimes the doubt is reasonable. So the doubt may look like, all right, we'll take consideration, we'll watch for further signs, we'll just be mindful of the weather and we will pay attention. But then obsessional doubt can creep in. So whether you have a fear of tornadoes or you have a fear of whatever bad thing happening, let's talk about reasonable doubt and obsessional doubt. So reasonable doubt is whenever you are in the here and now, like mindfully, you are examining the facts, you are observing what is actually happening in the present moment, and you are collecting that information. And with that information, you are gathering direct evidence that supports your doubt or your concern. Versus the obsessional doubt. With obsessional doubt, it can lead to unnecessary panic. And it's also like your mind is conjuring up facts and signs that are not truly there. So basically, there are pieces of doubt that are creeping in to your mind, and they are a product of your mind or that other voice. And that is a key part in doing therapy work to try to see the difference between what is reasonable doubt and what is obsessional doubt, because once you understand the difference between these two types of doubts, you can start to transform how you interact with doubt and how you approach doubt or challenging situations and uncertainties. We're partnering with NoCD to raise awareness about OCD. OCD is more than what you see on TV and in the movies. Imagine having unwanted thoughts about your relationship stuck in your head all day, no matter how hard you try to make them go away. That's Relationship OCD. It comes with unrelenting, intrusive images, thoughts, and urges about your partner or loved one. If you think you may be struggling with relationship OCD, there's hope. NoCD offers effective, affordable, and convenient OCD therapy. NoCD therapists are trained in exposure response prevention therapy, the gold standard treatment for OCD. With NoCD, you can do virtual, live, face-to-face video sessions with one of their licensed specialty trained therapists. It's affordable and they accept most major insurance plans. Breaking the relationship OCD cycle takes effective treatment. To get started with NoCD, go to nocd.com/savage. A lot of times what I'm talking about with patients is how can we change your relationship with uncertainty? And more often than not, their response is, oh, I've never thought about it like that. Because we all go through things in our life that is uncertain. There are no guarantees in life. And with all of the uncertainties that happen, we do try to take control, but even then, there is a level of uncertainty that, again, nothing is guaranteed. So if we can deal with doubt effectively, imagine how that can keep you focused and calm in your decision making. In bringing it back to this metaphor, it's like if you knew the difference between a tornado watch, which is just like being on the lookout for the conditions, and a tornado warning, meaning it has been spotted, it's there. Imagine if you used the reasonable doubt versus obsessional doubt and you could see the difference. So it's like, okay, the reasonable doubt helps me be on the lookout if some other bad things are happening. Obsessional doubt says, oh no, the bad things are happening and you need to take shelter. And so what we would want to do is shift you closer back to acknowledging and focusing on the reasonable doubt, because that's where you have direct evidence, and that can help you in navigating these uncertainties with confidence and with clarity. And one way you can do that is by asking that question of what would 100 other people say about this? In helping you get closer to that reasonable doubt and aligning with the reasonable doubt mentality would be asking that question of what would 100 other people say about this, and like within reason. It's very easy to get looped in to the obsessional doubt and get hooked by the panic that it's setting off, because whenever we are panicking and we're under distress, like our decision-making part of our brain goes offline. Like we are fully in survival mode. And so that's where the therapy can be very helpful in helping you see and feel the difference in your relationship with uncertainty. It's okay that you get hooked, but let's bring it back, get recentered, and not get absorbed into that obsessional doubt story. And therefore, we are retraining your brain on how to interact with these triggers. Some common obsessions when it comes to tornadoes, whether they are rational or irrational, it doesn't matter, but it's all centered around the fear of a tornado occurring and trying to prevent it from happening. And since we are at the end of this perceived tornado season, you or your loved one may be feeling a sense of ease that tornado season is over. But I encourage you, like now is the time to get into therapy so then you can start this journey and feel better the next time tornado season comes around. So those obsessions could look like having an overwhelming or persistent fear about a tornado happening, regardless of weather conditions. The intrusive thoughts are those unwanted thoughts that are popping in there that stress you out, where you're thinking about how a tornado could cause harm or death to you and your loved ones, or maybe it's that catastrophic thinking about your house being destroyed, or you're feeling trapped. That feeling of being trapped is a very common theme whenever it comes to anxiety and the helplessness that comes with just about any phobia. Other obsessional things that you may do include like monitoring the weather. You've maybe got multiple weather apps and you'll check them very frequently, and you've got all the alerts popping up on your phone just in case, right? You may be looking for signs of thunderstorms or noticing the wind, and even the sounds of wind can be very triggering to those with this phobia. You may also be in that camp of people that experiences a concern about your safety, even if you're not in a highly prevalent tornado area. So, for example, whenever you move into a new home, or if you're shopping for a new home, you want to make sure that you have a basement or that your home is sturdy enough to withstand a tornado if and when it comes through. You may have difficulty even like going on vacation because of an imminent concern that a tornado may happen or a hurricane may happen, especially like, at the beach or in the Gulf or in the tornado alley area of the United States. And your compulsions are going to look like, avoiding those certain places, or not traveling during tornado season, or you're going to stay home from work because the weather conditions are very uncertain. You may get a lot of reassurance from your family. Like if there is a thunderstorm during the night, you may be calling them or going into their room and being like, hey, is there a tornado outside? Like, let's just watch the weather. Or maybe you've got those like radios where you're listening in to the emergency personnel and really getting the down low on what the weather status is. You could be inspecting your weather shelter. I've definitely come across plenty of people who have their storm shelter and it is stocked with all the canned goods and medical kits and all the things. And so you're overly prepared. In fact, you've already got that stuff in your basement or in your storm shelter, or you've got it in your bag. You've got it in your living room. Like you are Johnny on the spot, ready for this emergency should it happen. And like that's challenging because yes, it's great to be prepared and we love it when we're proactive, but when is it harmful? When is it too much? When is it impacting your day-to-day living to where like you're not going to work, or you're not going out with friends, or you're just simply not relaxing at home when it's your time to just have some zen? You may also, as a compulsion, make sure that your family knows that maybe a tornado is projected for that day or afternoon, or you're keeping them in the loop about the weather, and you're also ensuring that they know what to do in case of a tornado warning. See, I got it that time. Yes. Like basically you're doing the safety drills with your loved ones or the people you live with. Like for you, it would be the bane of your existence to live on the top floor of an apartment building. You're like, no to the thank you. So that's part of the avoidance and all the compulsions that can happen. And again, you could be changing your plans or your travel or doing a lot of research to try to stay on top of like, how do tornadoes form? What are the signs of a tornado? And when is tornado season? How do tornadoes work? So not only will we talk about that relationship you have with uncertainty and with fear, we're also going to visit those exposure and response prevention strategies to help you in navigating this anxiety. And with the exposure and response prevention, again, we're going to do things that are in your typical day-to-day activities. I will never ask you to do anything that is unsafe. Like, I will not ask you to film or be a storm chaser of a tornado. If that's something that you want to do, sure, we can talk about it. But I'm not going to force you to do something that is inherently unsafe and it's something that you ultimately don't want to do. So that's where we're going to have that conversation about your willingness to do these exposures and are you willing to feel better? We will revisit that many times to help you remember what your goals are and why you're doing these exposures because, of course, exposures are uncomfortable and they're not fun. So we may start with, some of the milder exposures of like, let's listen to a tornado warning, like the siren part. Or we may simulate doing a tornado drill. Like we're going to pretend like, oh, there's a tornado in the area and we're going to go out into the hallway and do, a tornado thing. Or we may read articles about tornadoes, look at video clips, pictures, looking at weather reports, talking about severe weather conditions. We may also go outside on a windy day when it is safe and reasonable, right? The other parts of your exposure would be taking off some of those extra weather apps and reducing the number of times that you check those weather stations. We may remove that radio that you're listening in to. We may leave that safety kit at home tucked away. We're not going to carry it with us around the clock during tornado season. And whenever you are working on these exposures, we do have that work zone. So it's like as soon as you feel an urge to do something until the time that your anxiety comes down, we call that the work zone. We can, at the very least, delay those compulsions. Our goal is to delay, decrease, or eliminate. So even if you can delay checking that weather app for, say, an hour, kudos to you. Because, how easy is it for us to just pick up our phone? Have you ever looked at your phone stats and paid attention to, how much you're on the phone in a day on top of, how many times you pick it up in an hour? Yeah, I know. We're all guilty of just being on our phones too much. Even just delaying picking up your phone or delaying looking at that app, that weather app, it can be a huge victory because you are teaching your brain how to interact and be with the uncertainty. And you are teaching yourself that you can handle the uncertainty. And I will also encourage you to not avoid the things that you enjoy doing, right? We may have a discussion on values of what do you love and cherish most in this world? Is it family, friends, love, fun? We will go through that list of values. And are you acting within your values? Are you enjoying those things that you love most? Or are you allowing your fear to be in the driver's seat? We want to shift that narrative and have you more in the driver's seat and the fear take a back seat. And ultimately, you are going to be learning new ways in thinking about these emotions and dealing with these emotions. And you may walk away with feelings of I am capable to stay calm and centered even when I feel uncertain. Or it's, I am capable of handling whatever comes my way. And we could even come up with a plan of yes, if you have this fear of tornadoes, when is it reasonable to seek shelter? So then we could talk about it where it's okay, I would seek shelter when it is that tornado warning and the tornado warning is happening within a certain mile radius of my location. Or it's a certain speed of a hurricane, level 4 or 5. Again, I'm not fully aware of all of these measures, but you are, and I know you are because you have Googled it to the end and back of the internet. And speaking of that would be another compulsion that I would ask you to delay, decrease, and eliminate. I am asking this of you to help you reach your value-driven goals. Another form of clarity and statement and positive affirmation you could say to yourself is, I can focus on the present moment and take things one step at a time. And then going back to that reasonable doubt, you're able to lean in to the reason and the logic more so and not get swept away by the obsessional doubt and the uncertainties and getting hooked into that story that your phobia or your OCD wants you to believe. We're partnering with NoCD to raise awareness about OCD. OCD is more than what you see on TV and in the movies. Imagine having unwanted thoughts about your relationship stuck in your head all day, no matter how hard you try to make them go away. That's Relationship OCD. It comes with unrelenting, intrusive images, thoughts, and urges about your partner or loved one. Breaking the OCD cycle takes effective treatment. Go to nocd.com to get evidence-based treatment. All right, so that is a wrap for today's episode. And y'all, I'm so excited because I have a lot of exciting guests coming up on the show. So in the show notes, if you've got a question, whether it's for me or some potential guests, like I'm going to have guests of all kinds coming up over the next 6 months. So get those questions in. I've got a link in the show notes where you can submit the questions. I really want to hear from you guys, and I want to know your questions. And I'll be back here next week where I'm going to be talking about what exposure response prevention therapy is and what it is not, because it is the gold standard treatment for OCD. Yet let's have a conversation to help you understand that it's not necessarily some big scary thing, or that it's something that you can't do. So tune in for that episode. And while you're here, I've also got a guidebook called Clarity for New Beginnings, and it's a great way to help you get started in recognizing your goals and where your fears are holding you back. And it can help you in getting started with therapy. It can potentially eliminate the first 3 to 5 sessions because you've already checked off some of these exercises that I literally do with my patients in the first 3 to 5 sessions. So I've got a link for that guidebook in the show notes, and I would love for you to grab your copy of the guidebook today, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week. Thank you for listening to another episode of Bossing Up, Overcoming OCD. This information is intended to be helpful and not a substitute for professional counseling. If you're struggling with any mental health challenges, I encourage you to seek help from a qualified therapist or healthcare professional. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners, and don't forget to check out the affiliate links in the show notes for hand-picked recommendations that can brighten your day. Your support through these links helps keep the show running and provide valuable content. You're not alone in your journey. Stay strong, stay resilient, and keep bossing up. See you next time.